We're now moving on to the first panel. This is our domain expert panel. And again, if I can get this down. Jas Dahil is the Big House and AHB's operations director. He'll moderate this panel because actually I'm on the panel. So it wouldn't be appropriate for me to moderate it. And we're going to talk about the importance of domain experts in not only helping to identify challenges,
I don't want it to be technical,
but also provide insights
here.
into what can realistically be just deployed. So the theory and the realism is where I think the domain experts come in. You're going to hear hopefully from me, but you're also going to hear from Chris, come up, and also Vinaytosh, who is our health expert. So Jas, come on up.
Okay. Possibly. Thank you very much, Naz. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning. I'm not quite sure at the moment what time it is. I think it's still morning. I've got to bring my notepad because obviously I'm with 3 experts at the moment, so I'm going to struggle. Just a quick one, just to let you know. Naz has had an introduction. Chris has had an introduction. I'm just going to pass the microphone over to Dr. Vinaytosh here, just to give him a brief introduction on himself.
Hello everyone, I am Director Institute of Artificial Intelligence, Governmennt University, and
he just got promoted actually.
College of Healthcare Management
Director of Healthcare in AN.
Thank you, Dr. Vinaytosh. Right, we'll begin with just a basic question, a quick introduction into what the domain expert actually does. So I'm just going to pass this over to Chris to say, what do you think the most important part is, or when working on an AI development product?
Yes, it's making the link between the complexities of delivering a successful operation and how technology can help find a solution to a problem. So, for example, if you have an issue with parents who are alcohol abusers, the tech developers need to understand what that problem looks like and how data could help social workers and health workers on the ground to make better decisions about those parents and the children who may be at risk. So the domain expert can sort of talk through the process. I mean, how does the actual process work on the ground? And how do you code that process, or how do you turn that process into code so that data can make a difference?
And yourself, Dr. Vinaytosh?
Role of domain expert.
Yes, domain expert.
So it's for me actually, domain expert is a person who actually foresees the journey of science to technology, so that it is adding more value into for society as well as people as well as economic value.
Right. And yourself, Naz?
The best example is in the room. Our Uzbek colleagues, for example, they've identified a problem. The problem being that lots of people, lots of citizens want the same answers to the same question.
Right.
And you could have somebody sitting there providing them over and over again. Or you could do what they've done, which is to move down the AI route, which means that the vast majority of questions will be resolved through artificial intelligence, rather than having somebody there who is routinely repeating what needs to be said. And that's because they've listened to the people on the ground. They've listened to the people who are receiving the information, the people who are delivering the information, and they've adopted a solution which is now being looked at by other parts of the world.
Yeah, and you talk about the information and data and everything that we need. So as experts, we know for artificial intelligence or AI development, we require a lot of historical data that we're actually using. I mean, as a healthcare expert yourself, I mean, how do you explain to your own peers how we can use that historical data?
Data is the thing, is a fuel of artificial intelligence. The thing is, when we keep discussing about, the first Who owns data? That is also important. Lot of things need to be done before we start using data, especially in healthcare. See, we can make a model which is based on a biased data, and then it is of no use. So the participation is required from every part, even from patient part or government part, so that this data is readily available to researcher, so that they can build models which are really beneficial, which represents the society or which represent the phenotype we are talking about.
So back to you, Chris, about the historical data. I mean, you obviously use it in the policing. I mean, how do you get across with using historical data within policing? I mean, where is that data kept? Is there an issue getting that data?
I'll talk about child care by the there is a policing element. So since 1996 in the UK, there have been 1,500 cases of children being killed or seriously harmed as a result of some form of neglect or abuse. And each of those cases has got a lengthy report, which is in the public domain, that explains that child's journey and comes up with some recommendations about how lessons could be learned and that problem avoided. So Michael is currently codifying some of that. Well,
Right.
I don't know whether we're going to get to all 1,500, but we're putting a lot into the system, so using artificial intelligence. So where the domain expertise comes in, there's a couple of issues. We know that, for example, that serious maternal mental ill health is a really big risk. Now, you wouldn't necessarily pick that up from reading those reports, but once Michael knows it or the coders know it, they can actually give that a higher grade.
Right.
So the domain expert looks at the historical data and says that some's got more relevance than the other, and then the AI will work with it. The other thing is that these 1,500 cases, of course, all start from a deficit model. Something has gone wrong. So if you want the system to identify children in the future where things might go wrong, you can't just start with negative models, because a lot of children have the same background factors, so you've got to try and work out what are the positive things in their life as well. So you've got to net one off against the other, so what are the positive things? So in terms of codifying it, you then have to work out how does that historical data make a rich picture that enables us to make sense of today's complexity.
Yeah. And now you worked in the law, obviously. And
I think the point you try to make, Jas, is that who owns this data? An individual will say, well, it's about me, therefore I own it, and therefore you shouldn't be able to do anything with it because you have to ask my permission. And that's rather difficult if you're talking about thousands or millions of pieces of data. You could be spending the rest of eternity getting permission. And so the problem then resolves itself. How does one deal with that? Well, first things first, transparency. You've got to be open with the British public, the UAE public, the Uzbek public, that you are collecting this data and that you will use this data for a specific purpose in order to improve society. You've got to ensure that those people who have access to the data are the only people who have access to the data, which of course gives you a sense of a reassurance that it's not going to fall into the hands of nefarious bodies. Additionally, you've got to be able to say to people that we will limit what we will do with this data. So we will only use it for our purposes, for these purposes. We will not use it for any other purpose. And so if you are transparent and you are open with your public, with your citizens, you are more likely, it doesn't mean you will, but you're more likely to get a buy-in, to get people who understand what you are doing, and to be supportive of it. At the end of the day, governments could simply say, we're going to do this, and mandate it everybody, but then you will lose public confidence. So you've got to maintain public confidence, and that's through proper transparency and proper explanation.
Right. And I mean, we spoke earlier on about this. I mean, your experiences back in UK, and now we're in the UAE. You can see the cultural differences between the two.
Cultural differences in the maybe if you're watching the news, we're having a conversation about a high-speed rail link in the United Kingdom, which has taken 20 years and still isn't built, and may be cancelled. whereas other parts of the world, it can be built today and be ready tomorrow. We have this is a democratic country, has planning regulations, ensures that everybody is properly consulted with, a process is followed, etc., etc. Other bodies and other nations can simply say, right, do it.
Yeah.
Right? I have my feeling is that the UAE can, whoever it is within the UAE, can say, do it, and it will get done.
Yeah.
The fact that, for example, this centre, the HPC, is up and running is a testament to the ability of the UAE to make things happen. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to see it, that's not necessarily the case in other parts of the world. However, what it does mean is that you can move faster. And we all know, particularly in the technology world, if you move fastest, you are ahead of the game, and others will be playing catch up.
Yeah, no, great point to prove there. I mean, I was just dropping back to what Dr. Vinaytosh mentioned earlier about biased data and synthetic data, and why that would make a negative effect on what we were trying to move along with. So do you want to just explain a little bit further into the biased data?
Biased data is a big problem actually. Digital divide is there. In many countries actually we talk about, suppose we go for genome sequencing in here in UAE. So if suppose we are doing genome sequencing for all Emirati population. And on the basis of that, suppose we are coming with some guidelines and all. So Emirat, there are a lot of expats also. So that data is not representative of the people living in UAE. And same way, there are many races or many marginalized society segments which are underrepresented. Same way, suppose we are developing a model based on ChatGPT. The ChatGPT data is from where this data is taken actually. Whether every person, every stakeholder is properly represented in that data. If not, then maybe suppose it is trained on some soft skills, and those words are not good for certain sort of society, so it can actually counterproductive also. That's why I always say the AI has potential. The lot of investment is need to be done, and lot of regulation need to be defined actually. Not only means makeshift arrangement should be then, how data will be collected, how data will be used. There should be scrutiny of that. There should be monitoring of that, whether data collection procedures are properly in place or not. So bias is actually, if bias is there, then sample is not representative of the population. And whatever you are trying to generalize on, that is going to be counterproductive.
No, I think we spoke about this once before about double negatives and so forth, about having a 92% proof algorithm as opposed to the 74%.
Suppose data is there and bias is there, kind of 499 people are there which are actually not diseased, and only one person is there which is diseased in that population. Now suppose my model is every time predicting it as a normal population, not diseased population, then it is going to be right 499 divided by 500 times. So that accuracy is there. So then also this is of no use. That's why I always urge the domain experts, the people at the helm of technology, to think beyond accuracy. It starts from data, not it starts from model. First data comes, then model comes, and then of course lot of testing and other things are there.
Chris, about yourself, any breaches in sensitive data in the UK that you could think that when modelling, any potential risk in biasness?
That's an interesting thing. I did some work on lie detector testing and sex offenders in the UK. So do some work on that. Polygraph testing is about 90% accurate. So if you're dealing with a very small group of people, most of whom you know are likely to be untruthful, 90% is not too bad. However, if you're trying to work out, suppose you've got 1,000 employees and you want to know if some of them are dishonest, I'm creating a silly picture here, and it's 90% accurate, it's going to identify 100 employees wrongly as being dishonest. And if you have got 10 thieves, it's going to not identify one of them. So there is a problem with having certain types of data that isn't totally accurate because it compounds and makes things worse.
No, you want to add anything to that? Or?
No, I think you heard from the domain experts. I'm not going to add anything. Yeah, absolutely. I think people need to understand that there will be biases in the system. People need to understand that they have to mitigate for that, and that at the end of the day, there will still be a need for a human to be able to give you that level of confidence that what you're doing is right.
All right. I was going to ask anybody in the audience want to ask a question to these three while I've got them here. Is there any questions that somebody would like to ask?
You've stunned them into silence.
No, not at all. Anyway, just with your domain expertise. Go, oh.
My question is to support that you mentioned just now about point testing. It's a compounding thing, can it be reliable still?
Yeah, and obviously we're not talking. I was just talking about the problem with the sort of bias result. So the way we use polygraph testing in the UK is it's used on registered sex offenders who are released from prison. Now you start from the position that probably most of them are going to be slightly untruthful, and many of them may be failing to follow their licence conditions. So they are all subject to regular polygraph testing on release from prison. And so the probation service who manage this would say that it gives them a great deal of confidence that the vast majority of sex offenders are either adhering to their licence, so the community is safe, or if they're not adhering to their licence, that surfaces quickly through the polygraph test, and the public can be protected either by sending him back, because they're all in, right? Sending him back to prison, or alternatively putting much more restrictive conditions around his licence. We've been working on this in the UK since 2003, believe it or not, and it became mandatory for all sex offenders in 2014. And I think the probation service would say that on the whole the public is well served by it, and sex offenders get a reasonable deal from it. It helps them behave better because they know that if they behave badly, they're likely to be caught.
Oh, any more questions? Sorry.
Question again to Chris. So we know that in the UK you have, I think, the highest number of cameras per person, public cameras, right?
Yeah.
Or one of the highest. How big is, let's say, AI? How much is it applied to these public cameras, and what are the top use cases?
Right, almost not at all at the moment. Interestingly, there was an announcement by, so we have these party political conferences in the UK, and they come up in the autumn. So the current government, the Conservative Party, are having their conference at the moment, and they like to make big announcements at their conference, which reassures the party faithful and the public at large. So the policing minister has just announced that the images that come from CCTV cameras that show thieves in action are going to be compared with the government passport and driver license database. So you've got a photograph in your passport, you've got a photograph. And they must be using some artificial intelligence to do that. So that, I think, is the first real concerted effort to use imagery and artificial intelligence. I suspect the security services probably do a bit, that they don't tell us about, but that's why they're secret. Going back to my original presentation, CCTV cameras tend to be owned by local authorities. There's 316 local authorities in the UK. They've all got their own system, and therefore trying to apply some sort of blanket process for managing that with AI is very difficult. But I suspect that the bigger councils will take confidence from the current government's announcement they're going to use passport photographs. They will take confidence from that, and perhaps it will become more common. But it's not used very much at the moment. But having said that, when I was in the police, I mean, the first thing you would do with any homicide is go and find all the relevant CCTV, and some poor individual or individuals. And I tell you, you need a special brain and a special set of resilience to do it. And sit and go through all the CCTV to see if they can find the crucial moment on CCTV. And many a crime is, if it's not solved through the CCTV, the start of the solution starts with CCTV. But artificial intelligence will enable us to take away those poor individuals who have to sit and watch it.
There's another gentleman there. So, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. Well, that's really interesting opportunity to get to know what you guys are doing. It's really useful. Most of the questions have been covered by many people, but I just have one thing to understand. When it comes to the tech transfer aspect, which was referred to in the start, how is the professional aspect of localizing it within the MENA, within the GCC? How do you think of taking it to the market? How will it be properly customized / localized? Who will be the stakeholders? How will it be done? What's just an idea on the road?
No, that's a really good question, because number one, upstairs, obviously, this is where Mahir is actually based. So all the data from this this GCC or the Sharjah is located here. It doesn't go out the country as such. We look for localization in terms of we're working with the universities, the graduates. We're looking to promote job creation within this region, and that's through the local, your local populace as such. So if we've got great developers and interns with an idea, let's use the system upstairs and let's generate that idea. That creates the wealth, or that really brings this region to where we want it to be.
And for example, we are using de-identified data for developing model in case of healthcare, and we are using data from India and all. Finally, before commercializing the product in UAE, we need to test those models on UAE data. And I was discussing with one gentleman from AI ministry, and he was saying government is working on that, how this data can be readily available to researchers so that they can fine-tune their model for local environment. So that's it.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, one last question then.
Regarding AI, can this also help with trials and also drug discovery as well? I know there's a company in Abu Dhabi and Silico who's doing using AI for drug discovery.
Yeah, actually it expedited the drug discovery process. So lot of calculation you need to do. As Michael was telling about, you hours of experiment you can run in minute or hours. So that will be the addition of AI. And even sometimes we actually forget or we miss certain patterns in data that can be also identified by AI. So AI adds lot of value in drug discovery also if proper use cases are identified.
So, because obviously time is of the essence at the moment, just the last one to finish off. As a domain expert, you've used your domain expert to get on Netflix, I take it?
Yeah, I guess so. My memoirs are turning into an 8-part drama, and the actor who's playing me is much more handsome than I am. But can I thank our panel? Can I thank Chris, Vinaytosh, and Jas? And would you please show your appreciation?
Thank you.